My thoughts on Bosco is, as we discussed, right? You look at DePaul, defensive problem. They can't stop anybody, right? I don't know who Joe's is anymore after last week. If they don't get their guys back, what I saw last week looked too much like last year. But let's just say, coming into this week, I thought they were a hell of a defensive unit. So you have Bergen that plays defense, you have Joe's, and you have Bosco. No one else plays defense outside of that. So now you ask yourself, who has a better chance of scoring? Now we know Sabella, second half of the season, this is not unusual. Sputtering out the gate.
No, because they schedule so tough. They could have scheduled cupcakes and they could be 4-0 right now. You know what I mean? They could, but that's not what they want to do.
His teams are used to it, so they'll believe him when he says we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because every guy in that locker room, except for probably the freshmen, have saw it before. Keep it a buck. We here in the studio.
A lot of these offers don't be that real, so it's not committable.
That feel like when everybody's getting their turn and it's not yours. What they call you? The Godfather of New Jersey.
Powerful man. I ain't gonna brag, but that's what they said. I ain't say that.
Welcome to another episode of Keep It a Buck. I'm blessed with the presence of some guy you may know, Darren Cooper. He's the face of Varsity Aces. Been around for a long time. Big writer, sports. He covers the sports scene in Bergen County. Always been waiting to meet him. I'm blessed to have you here, man. Thank you for coming to join us.
I am thrilled to be here. There are a lot of podcasts and people who do this kind of. I'm not just saying this. Yours is one of the only ones I ever watch or pay attention to because you say stuff I don't know.
Oh,
and I like to think I know a lot. So, big fan. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So, before we get into the football things, I just want to, bring our following into understanding who you are and how long you've been around, right? So, I was telling, one of our big behind the scenes guys, Ahmed Thomas, some history of how I got into you. So, you were my lifeline to Big North Super Red Conference football when I was in college.
Gotcha.
I used to follow your articles, going back to the time when Bosco was building their powerhouse. And, you were along for that ride, attending the dinners and the different things.
I was at the Granitel Rose. That's one of my favorite stories of all time, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, this Bosco thing was a phenomenon that hit New Jersey. And, I always try to take my time to shout out Coach Toll, the man who was the architect of this whole New Jersey football scene as we currently know it, from private to public. His model has spilled down.
And spread all over the region now too, man.
Tell us about that, man.
The fact, just look at the results from last week, right? With the New York schools, and it used to be a time when our North Jersey superpowers would go out there and it wasn't even close. It wasn't even a game. And one of the other stories I tell all the time is St. Joe's Prep down in Philly when Infante is the coach. Mm-hmm. All right. Bosco used to open up with them like every year, and they'd beat the snack out of them, And then Augie took his teams down there a couple of years and played them, and finally St. Joe's Prep beat them. And I don't know the year because we've been around way too long, and I can't tell you it was 2016 or 15. I need to look at Gridiron to know for sure. Mm-hmm. And I'm hanging out. They win, St. Joe's Prep wins, and Gabe's hanging out. I knew Gabe from Paramus Catholic, and I stood there and talked to him for a while, and he's like, Darren, we had to tell our guys that this North Jersey team was coming. They were going to line up. They were going to hit us in the mouth. They were going to get in the huddle. They were going to line up the next play. They were going to hit us in the mouth again. We were going to line up, and they were going to do it. He said, we've been telling these kids this for years, like Bosco did, and it finally kind of clicked with our kids. We realized the work we had to put in to get to their level, and now look at St. Joe's Prep now. I mean, they one of the best programs in the country now. Absolutely. So yes, it all stems from Toll at the start.
What was that like watching that dynasty come into play? Like when you first started realizing what was happening out there?
The balls, the guts to go play De La Salle, the guts to go play Alabama, and be like this school in northern New Jersey that not a lot of people had ever heard of before, and then just say, we will show up, we will be tougher than you, we will be smarter than you, and we'll beat you. Just name the time and place, and we'll show up and play. We'll show up and play. And so almost like that, swag. They didn't call it swag back then, but almost like that aura that just kind of built, and it all stemmed from the willingness to play physical football. Just we're going to hit you. We're going to hit you. We're going to line up. We're going to hit you. And then let's see if you want to come back for more. Let's see if you want to do that in the second quarter. Let's see if you want to do it in the third quarter. And the mix with the athletic talent that was there at the time, it was awesome football to watch. It was awesome football to watch. Now, I think the game evolved even more then. You and I saw it down, and I've been telling people the story about Chaminade Madonna for 2 weeks now. It was like watching the evolution of football in front of our very eyes. I mean, Bergen wanted to turn it into a street fight. Let's hit. You can't hit them. You can't catch them. Can't hit them. And Chaminade Madonna, their speed of decision making, quarterback and the wide receiver, and everything they did was so fast. And I know Vito knew they were fast, but you can't prepare for that speed of decision making. The snap back from the center was fast, So he was making decisions in 1.1 second, and so that was fascinating to see that evolution. But 10 years ago, Bosco was the cutting edge.
Yeah, so you witnessed the Bosco model, right? And
Correct.
then you was also around as North Jersey started catching up, started having players play one side of the ball.
Some guys wearing black uniforms and gold. Yeah, I don't know, what was their name again?
Living.
I think that's what it was. It was, I have been on I've been at the record since 2003, and it was just so wild. It was just so they totally upset the apple cart. You know what I mean? And I know they get a bad rap for the living stuff, and it's so bogus. It's so bogus. They played great football. They played clutch football. They played good football. The games would get down to the wire, and it'd be 3 minutes left or whatever, and the game would hang in about, and they would make plays. They would just make plays, and it was really exciting to be a part of. I almost equate it to Star Wars and Darth Vader. You're only as good as your adversary. Bosco was so good, so you knew whoever was going to show up and eventually knock them off, they were going to be really good too. And Paramus Catholic was really good.
And to me, that was the turning point of when North Jersey opened up, right?
The playing field leveled off.
Yes.
The playing field leveled off because DePaul had always kind of hung in the weeds a little bit. Then they were like, well, shoot, if Paramus Catholic can be good, we can be good. And Peters was always good. And then when they made the Super Football Conference, they finally got Peters out of the Hudson County League, and it was like It's fascinating to me now, and this season in particular, I don't want to jump ahead, but this season, I think everybody's got flaws, but I think everybody's good. And I can see a pathway for Joe's to win it all. I can see a pathway I don't know if I see a pathway for PC to win, but I can see a pathway for them to get to the finals. I can see a pathway for Del Barton to get to the finals. I can see a pathway for Bergen to win, so I can see a pathway for Bosco to get back to the finals, because the talent has been spread out now, because everybody, the biggest thing, even with the transfer portal and people, is kids want to play, So, right?
So let's talk about that. You take me back to the Bosco time. Do you remember what the depth was like there? Can you tell our viewers what that was like?
That's the
down
biggest,
to third string.
Yes, that's the biggest thing that's different now. Is nobody, even from talking to the Campanelli, we don't have the depth we used to have. So we don't have the depth we used to have, and it's true. But back then, yes, when Patterson Catholic closed, and those kids showed up at Bosco.
Al-Qadim Muhammad, Elijah Shoemaker.
Oh, boy, was Shoemaker playing. Gee, Quan too. And they all go to Bosco. It's like, shoot. They had like first team all county kids who then had to sit down. You know what I mean?
Future All-Americans.
Yeah. So that doesn't happen anymore. But yes, the depth was astounding back then.
I think that was one of the bigger differences. So what we usually like to start the show off with, we like to talk about like the rankings and how teams fared. But I've been waiting to get you here, right?
I'm ready.
Because one of the questions, and I know you took some heat for it. All right. So
I ranked Bergen number 1.
But then you, after the Chaminade game, you guys had Joe's at number 1.
Yes, but that was not. I was outvoted.
Can you let us into how that happened?
Okay. So the record/NorthJersey.com, Varsity Aces is the social media brand. We're part of a family of newspapers across the state. South Jersey, Central Jersey, Shore. And it's almost like the AP poll. We have, I think we're 7 or 9. It's got to be an odd number to break a tie. And we vote on Sundays and Mondays. You nominate your teams and you vote. And I'll tell you right away, I was the only one from the network. It's the USA Today, New Jersey network. I was the only one at the Chaminade Madonna game. We were there. And I did say in my notes in the vote, like, guys, I think Bergen should still be number 1. There was no team, I'm like, this is the second best football team I ever saw. St. John Bosco is still number 1 when they had DJ and they were so loaded. But there was some thought, well, Joe's has played 2 out-of-state teams and won, which was totally fair. And so Bergen goes in, and the fact I think that the other voters looked at it and said they got beat by 40 points. That's also fair. But I think I was the only one out of everyone else who voted Bergen number 1. They kept, and everybody else had Joe as 1. Listen, to some degree, do we like to shift around the poll if we
Make
can?
it interesting.
Yes. This is the other thing that happens with the poll all the time. When we do like the state rankings of the public schools, or even the North Jersey poll, the top 20 poll, and you're ranking group 5s, group 4s, group 3, group 2s, and group 1s. And I use this analogy all the time. Is Westwood better than Hackensack? If Westwood played Hackensack tomorrow, do they beat them?
No.
No, they don't beat them. Could they ever beat them? No. Well, maybe, I don't want to say no. But I was at Hackensack today doing a video interview, so I'm thinking of Hackensack. But what team would you rather be on? Would you rather be on a 3-6 Hackensack team or a 12-0 Westwood team?
Okay, 12-0 Westwood.
I'd rather be on the Westwood team,
Yeah.
right? So who had the better season?
Okay.
Westwood had the better season. So one of the big factors I use in rankings is, well, who's having a good season right now? What team is undefeated that you maybe didn't think was going to be undefeated? You can play the, well, Hackensack would beat them card, but if you played that card on them, the rankings would never change.
And that's a popular card in the polls, even all county, right?
Oh God, yes.
And so I'm glad to finally get here and discuss that, because our viewers probably will want to know that. You'll look in the all county thing and you'll see certain kids from smaller schools,
Yeah.
right, that played weaker competition, get selected over kids that play in a tougher league, tougher brand of football.
I get to pick. I love having this conversation. I get to pick our own all North Jersey team, our own all area team, and I'm so lucky, and you get to do this too. You go watch Glen Rock play Waldwick Midland Park, or just 2 group 2s, or 2 group 1s, and you'll see some 5'11", 185-pound kid who plays. It happened to me the other night at Passaic Valley. There was a kid for Passaic Valley who played on both sides of the ball, never left the field, and he was the best player on the field. And you could see how Passaic Valley rallied around this kid. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So the analogy I use all the time is, does Passaic Valley win a game? He's not the perfect game. Does Glen Rock win a game if they don't have that one kid who's playing tight end, who's their only big offensive weapon, who's the middle linebacker who makes 17 tackles a game, who's also the punter, who also holds on kicks? If you took him off the team, they wouldn't function. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So is that kid better than the 12th best Bosco football player? No. Mm-hmm. If you lined them up head to head, who would Notre Dame want? Would they want the kid from Glen Rock who's 5'11"? No. They'd want the 12th best kid from Bosco. They'd want Jordan Thomas from Bosco. But as far as a contribution to the team, for crying out loud, it's hard to beat that kid from Glen Rock. And one of the things, bring it all back full circle to Toll, that was the other kind of thing that he had at Bosco, was he had a lot of those type of kids who would.
Malaguti. I mean, not Mal. Remember the little wrestler guy? You know, he's middle linebacker. He's about 175 pounds, about 5'8", 5'9".
Yes.
And he was a terror. He was a wrestler.
And the poor guy who kept getting concussions, linebacker, kept getting Mealy, Eric Miley. Eric Miley was another one. Not that big. He was pretty big though, but not that big. But like, I'm going to run through the wall. You know, I'm going to run through the wall. So there are players like that who exist all over North Jersey, playing for Clifton and Wayne Hills and Wayne Valley and everything. And when you watch them play, you got to reward that contribution some kind of way. So when all county or all area stuff comes out, yeah, man, I look at that because sometimes I feel like, well, yeah, Ryan Butler's a stud from Bergen Catholic, but he was, I think this was a sophomore year. Like, was he as important to Bergen Catholic's, season as this one kid was for Glen Rock, who, they wouldn't have a team without him? It's a tough, don't get me wrong, it's a tough call, and you weigh a lot of different factors, but that's one of the perks of the job.
Did you guys ever consider just doing a whole public different all league and from private separating it?
That comes up all the time, and this is the first year we're doing a non-public poll and a public poll separate, because a state poll, because that was an issue for the other guys across the state about the state poll is too North Jersey centric, and it is.
But I mean, rightfully so.
Correct.
Right.
I used to say, well,
Beat 'em.
show up and beat us. You know what I mean? Show up and beat us, and we'll change it. Donovan Catholic, Red Bank Catholic, St. Thomas Aquinas. Show up and win, and things will talk. You know how many non-public football teams there are in New Jersey?
No. Tell us.
32, 33. So you're going to rank 10. No offense.
I gotta believe it's more than 32, 33 teams.
No, look at non-public A and non-public B. If you filled out the
North Jersey or the whole Jersey?
State.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. There's not that many. So you look at, and then you hate to say it, but some of them have different philosophies, and they don't want to recruit. They don't want to play at the same level as Bosco, Bergen, Joe's, so they're automatically out. You know what I mean? Immaculate Conception in Montclair, St. Mary's of Rutherford to some degree, so they're automatically out. So then you're ranking the 10 best teams out of only 12. 50. Yeah, you're only 15. Yeah. For a while before we adjusted the North Jersey poll, the non-public North Jersey poll, St. Mary's was always sixth before we brought St. Four. It was like, no, we got to put St. Peter's in. St. Mary's will always be sixth. You know what I mean? They'll always be sixth behind Bergen, Bosco, Joe's, Paramus Catholic, and DePaul. So I'm worried that's why I wasn't in favor of doing it that way.
Makes sense. It was brought to my attention that Caldwell, right, has been undefeated for years.
They have the longest win streak in the state. Yes.
Yeah.
And you got to respect that. No matter what level of competition they're playing, and I can also say, I saw them in person last year. They beat a really good Westwood team last year. And you can't possibly see everybody in the state you want to see. But, I've seen Millville the last couple of years, and Millville's really good. And so you kind of carry that over when you're ranking, even though they're not from North Jersey, and not in our coverage zone, but you do take away some impression. Caldwell's pretty good. Yeah, Caldwell's got I think they're 2 or 3 in the 3, maybe 3. I think they're 3 because I think Tom's River North is 2.
Okay. So what was can you recall your rankings coming into this week before these games were played, right? Because I know there's been some movement. You guys had coming into this week, Joe's at 1, Bergen at 2.
Yeah.
We'll go. Who was 3?
In the non-public, I think it was DePaul was 3. DePaul was 3. I think Bosco was 4. And I know it changed. I know it all changed when it came out Monday, because I know Bergen went back to 1. Joe's is still sitting at 2. And I think it's Red Bank Catholic 3.
That would make sense.
Donovan 4, and then Bosco and DePaul, and then Bosco. I put Paramus Catholic 9th in my poll. Here's the other conversation I have with the other writers, who I love, and when we work hard, and it's fun to have this debate. This debate we're having, we have this almost every week. Is I've tried to explain to the guys up here almost the thought process for the non-public powers. Like, if we ain't number one, it doesn't freaking matter where you're gonna put us.
Yeah.
So I've tried to tell them, like, listen, if you really, Bosco's the perfect example right now. Are they one of the 5 best teams in the state? In other words, could they beat just about everybody else in the state that they played? They sure could. They're 1-3.
It's very possible they can win out the rest of their schedule.
It is possible. I don't think it's possible, but it is possible. So some people think, well, that's I don't mind keeping them number 3 in the state because they really are the 3rd best team in the state. But I look at it and it's like they're 1-3.
I understand.
They're 1-3. At some point now, we got to add some credibility to the results we're seeing. And I know if they play Donovan or St. Augustine Prep, when a couple years ago, St. Augustine Prep was so good, I was down there. Bosco beat them 16-0, 17-0. They were better. They were just better. And that's what's going to happen again this year. I mean, that's what history tells us will happen. I don't know if it will, but that's what is. These teams are going to get higher seeds than Bosco and St. Peter's. St. Peter's, shoot, they might go 2-6. You know what I mean? But do you want to play them in the first round? I don't want to play. Who they draw?
I think St. Peter's have found their identity. What St. Peter's historically is a pass-first team, high-flying offense, and that's their DNA, and that's where they would go when in any sign of trouble. They have a young quarterback who is going to be really good.
Yeah,
he's young.
That's what Richie told me.
Yeah, he's going to be really good. But he's not ready for that load that they were throwing on him early in the season.
And they have scheduled tough too. Oh
yes.
My goodness,
was it Creekside? Creekside in Georgia.
Yeah.
Creekside didn't beat them. St. Peter's lost that game, in my opinion. They were winning. They were having a lot of success on the ground. They went away from that. And then got behind and felt like they had to throw their way back in it, and things spiraled.
Yeah.
St. Joe's Philly was flat out better than them. They were in a shootout with DePaul while they was running and controlling the clock. Paul took a little lead. They tried to throw themselves back into it, and it ended up in a 20-point loss. They go out last week with Del Barton and run Jalen, run and find Klein 33 times. And look what that did for them. So
they probably should have won. But it's okay. You make mistakes and you lose, but they probably should.
So they'll go into this week and they'll play St. Joe's, who is without their processor, the heart and soul of their linebacker course. Is in the hospital. Get well soon to Ricky Anastasi. He's got a condition that I'm not going to speak on, but it's gotten worse. So they'll be without him. And for lack of better words, Spencer DeVille is having a crazy season at linebacker. Came out of nowhere. He's a kid that didn't play last year because of injury, almost lost his leg, and then the year before that as a sophomore he played JV. He's one of the few kids that played every level that's probably going to play on the Division I level.
Gotcha. And
then you had Ricky, who's a 3-year starter, and when you run 3 linebackers, they can cover up for anything anybody else might be doing. What we saw last week against St. Anthony's, where Joe's looked a lot like they looked last year, can't stop a nosebleed. That linebacker core was atrocious. It was atrocious, and it got taken advantage of play after play after play. They need a big play, a touchdown. They exploited that. That's going to be a problem this week.
Well, let me ask you this
right
question.
at you.
Let me ask you this question now. I'm sure we'll talk about Bergen Bosco in a little bit. At what point, one of my favorite things about especially high school football and really all football is how your wins and losses form your identity. All right. Right now, Bosco's identity is they got beat by Bergen in the state final, and they haven't quite adjusted. It seems like they haven't quite found their footing since. That rattles them a little bit. All right, if you're Peters right now, and it's a close game in the fourth quarter against Joe's, what's your identity? I mean, aren't you a little nervous? Aren't you a little nervous that something bad's going to happen? Because something bad happened to us last week, and it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That I understand. With this group, I have a relationship with, a guy too on that staff. With this group is a young group. And they know they don't have an identity. But what they do know is that we can win. Eventually we're going to get one. And they think they found something.
Okay. That's all. You can play it that way too.
That right there.
I understand.
Will carry them through because at this point they're playing with house money. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Well, I'll hit you with this point because I've been thinking about this the last couple of days. Do you worry? Because I worry about this. With all the teams making the playoffs and the seeding committee and everything, the regular season matter?
Not really.
It doesn't, does it?
Not really.
Not really. Because it's almost like a shakedown cruise. I mean, Bosco killing Bergen last year wearing the black jersey didn't do anything for him in the state final, did it?
Yeah, just got him.
And does anybody from
choked
Bosco
out.
remember that game? Yeah, that was kind of nice. It didn't matter. We got beat 45-0. So it's an odd. All we're doing now, the regular season, all is about. The only thing the regular season gives you is home field in the playoffs. You do now. It is an advantage to be home for that semifinal game before you go to MetLife. But that's really the only thing you're playing for.
Yeah, I mean, I can't debate that. Let me walk you somewhere. So, give me your thoughts on Seton Hall Prep versus Bergen last week.
Vito gets the guys on the goal line after getting beat by Shawan Amadana. And Bergen Catholic post games are the best and the worst thing in my job because when they win, everybody swarms the field and you can't get to anybody you want to talk to. You can't find anybody. But it was really cool because there was nobody running onto the field after losing 61-21. And so I got to hear what Vito said to the guys, sitting right there. And I thought his message was so cool. There are certain times when kids are really receptive to coaching and certain times when they're not.
Absolutely.
And coaches have to step in, know when those moments are, and take advantage of them. And that was one of them for Vito right there. Team just got lost. Team just got beat. And I didn't write this, but I remember him saying, we're going to go back home. We're going to beat the bleep out of Seton Hall Prep. We're going to beat the bleep out of Don Bosco because that's how we're going to respond. So I was not surprised by the score. I just felt like he had him. It was like he had him. And this year, I'm a little disappointed in Seton Hall Prep, honestly.
I expected better.
I did too. I thought with the quarterback back, they had some talent in place. Fitz is such a good coach. And listen, we'll tell everybody is a good coach, The other coaches in the Super Football Conference, the other guys we're talking about, they all talk about how good a coach Fitz is. You know what I mean? So he has the respect of the Russos and the Sabellas of the world. And that means a lot. That's who they talk about. So I know so he must be good. I haven't spent a zillion hours studying them or anything, so he must be good. So that score, that was exactly the kind of bounce back Bergen was looking for. I just think, though, what we're saying before, everybody's got some flaws, and I think Bergen's got a couple of flaws too. But we'll see if they,
If somebody can exploit them here.
Correct, and I don't know if anybody can. I don't know if anybody can.
Yeah.
Can Joe's outscore them?
Yeah.
Maybe. Can Bosco pound them a little bit and make it a close game in the fourth quarter? Maybe, but
what history's shown me with the Bosco game is anything's possible, right? Because you look at last year, Bosco goes in there and Bergen's defense hasn't given up 100 yards rushing at that point in about 14 games, and Bosco runs for almost 300 yards.
I'll die on this hill. I thought last year though, Bosco had the matchup to beat him with
Chase.
with Moreno and Chase. This is like, all right, this is strength. There is nobody else in North Jersey who can block Sadir and DJ, but Bosco can. You know what I mean? And they did the first game. So when they played the second time, I was like, well, it's got to be the same script. You know what I mean? Football's about blocking and tackling.
Yeah.
Bosco can block them. Nobody else can. But it just didn't happen. I give Vito though those guys so much credit because they were prepared. They were just so well prepared. I also did not think the two quarterback system would really work in the end, and I was wrong. I didn't think it would really work at a big stage when rubber met the road, but I was wrong. It worked. It was 45-0, and it was I think that was more jaw to me last year. The 45-0 is a bigger shock than the 31-7. The 31-7, I'm like, well, yeah, if you can block the other guy and run the ball, you're going to win. But so that was my take.
Okay. Also, we saw Don Bosco prep at St. Joe's, Philly. What was your
I actually
thoughts on
thought Bosco played a little bit better than I thought. It had to be hard for them. I mean, they're playing a game on Monday. You know what I mean? They
and to refocus and prepare
yeah,
for Friday.
I mean, like they got to play. They play Saturday. Lightning comes. They talk about maybe playing Sunday, but the weather's supposed to be bad on Sunday, so then they got to go back Monday. They show up Monday. So like their whole routine had to be out of whack. You know, I mean, there's no way they were watching St. Joe's prep film. You know what I mean? Until Monday night, coming home from Joe's. So I actually thought they played pretty good. I think Bosco will do what they have done the last couple of years, which is they're just going to, and I wrote this in one of the prediction stories, they're just going to go back to, because I remember walking off the field with Danny at Archbishop Spalding. It was like, the only thing to do is work. And he's right. The only thing to do is work and try to get better. And good things will eventually happen. Now, I know right now, sitting here 3 days before the Bergen Bosco game, there's like a dozen kids in that Bosco who believe in good things are going to happen if we just keep working. Good things are going to happen. The ball's going to bounce our way. And it might. And it will eventually. It will eventually. So will it happen Friday night against Bergen? We'll see.
All right. Thoughts on the Paul versus Stepanak?
Man, I can't wrap my head around DePaul right now. I am. We'll go back to identity for a second. I was talking about St. Peter's prep identity. Is the worry that DePaul's identity is if our offense doesn't score 50 points, we can't win.
And
that's can become a problem. They are so talented. Des Jones, if you are my favorite North Jersey football player to watch right now. I just think you're fantastic. And there's a lot of you out there, but Des Jones is tremendous.
Well, tell me what you like about him. I know you got to talk to the crowd.
He's not afraid to go over the middle. He's just the full package. He's just the full package at wide receiver. I think he's just one of the most talented players we've had in the last couple of years. Again, he's not the only one, but man, he's just a difference maker. It's been fun to watch. One of the biggest joys, even for me, is watching kids develop from one year to the next, and realize, I remember when he was this good, now he's this good, and now he's this good. So I think Des Jones is even better than he was. Like Speedy's better than he was. You know what I mean? And that's fun to see from even a reporter's perspective. When you're the objective reporter, like, oh man, that guy's gotten so much better. He's worked really hard and gotten better. So Des Jones is he's improved as a player, and I think he's still got more to go. I think he can even be better. So I was shocked at that result, and some trouble, but and I think Nick was probably like scratching his head, like, this team is good. Like, why are we 1-2? How come? But boy, the Bishop McDevitt game was there for them.
Yeah, definitely.
And they just penalized themselves. They made too many mistakes. Zamet is fantastic. The line is good. So there's just a little something missing. To me, it's a little bit of young people learning to win. Just a little bit, making the plays when the game is really on the line. You can win a lot of you can look good in the third quarter. NFL games drive me nuts all the time. Sometimes like the third quarter, it happened. The game I was watching Sunday, the Packers are beating the Falcons in the third quarter, 24-12. And it's like the game's not won in the third quarter. You know what I mean? It comes down to the fourth quarter. You got to make plays at the end. So DePaul's still got to find their guy to beat a man, somebody to beat a man in the fourth quarter.
You think, because this is not unusual with DePaul to falter early in the season, then go on a run when it's time for Group 3 playoffs. Do you see that happening?
I kind of do, but listen, DePaul's a non-public A program playing in non-public B, so they are still the clear favorite to win non-public B. So I think they still win the state title. They might go 4-4 in the regular season, and I think they still probably win the state title.
All right. My next question is thoughts on what you saw out there at St. Joe's versus St. Anthony's.
I was. It just seemed like, boy, there was almost a part of me that was like, oh my God, I think St. Joe's saw that they were ranked number 1, and now it all went to their head, and they just think they got to show up and win. Mm-hmm. They just looked discombobulated, right? They just looked a little off. And
everything.
They're off, and this is the beauty though, and the curse of the style of offense and defense that they play. It's so rhythm based, and it's so good, man. When you can get in that slipstream and like we are unstoppable, but then the minute it like hiccups, then it's hard to get it back on track. So I thought we saw it a little bit. I was having this conversation with Brian Gibbs before the Cass Tech game. I was telling him about the DePaul Bishop McDevitt game. I said, Brian, it almost seemed like DePaul was unstoppable on offense, and then halftime happened, and they just didn't have the
7 points in the second half.
Yeah, they just didn't have the same sync that they had in the second half. And Brian said it's totally valid that happened to teams who are predicated on quick decisions and quick reads and everything, that you take a break and it just doesn't happen. Even a long possession, even like not having the ball at the start of the, and if you remember, in that game, McDevitt got the ball to start the second half and had the long drive, and then they punted, and that was the penalty and everything. They had the ball for like 8 minutes, and I remember looking at my watch and saying to myself, DePaul hasn't had the ball for like 50 minutes, a real time. You know what I mean? A real time. I don't know, your body just gets a little cold, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I thought I was surprised. I was surprised by that, because Joe's is. I was talking to a Joe's booster early in the season, and I'm like, well, they're still young. He's like, we're not young anymore. And you know what? We can't use that excuse anymore.
No,
all these young guys played. You know?
Yeah, there's no excuses. And for me, when you talk about that rhythm. I watched it in a win, right? But it doesn't harm you in Bosco. And I watched what I seen in the loss for St. Anthony's. I don't know if Joe's get some secret memo that Bosco had all of a sudden recruited the best DBs in the country, to where you feel that you have to run as much as you're running when they haven't shown you they can stop you from throwing the ball. And then again last week, Yasin Willis had a hell of a game. But there was a 3rd down and long, and you ran him. When I didn't get the memo on these DBs from St. Anthony's being world beaters. I'll take your receivers over 90% of the DBs you guys are going to face.
I'll make one other point, though. Listen, if we're going to talk about Bosco having the short week to get ready for St. Joe's prep,
okay,
we do have to say, to some degree, well, St. Joe's had the same kind of issue to deal with, too.
Mm-hmm. I didn't consider that. Yeah.
So they had one extra day because their game was Saturday, but they had to travel. And that matters too. So, and you know what? I didn't get to watch too. You never know. You travel, officiating.
That comes with the package.
It does.
You know,
it totally does.
And you know that going in.
You do.
You know.
You do. But it plays a factor. It plays a factor. And I've talked to reps about this too over the years. There is no reason. We're in Hollywood, Florida. Bergen Catholic is not going to get any calls against Chaminade Madonna. None. You know why? The referee's never going to see Vito Campanelli and Bergen Catholic ever again. You know what I mean? He might see the Chaminade Madonna coach again, or he might know a little bit about their style of play, or know to anticipate, well, his kid's really that fast. You know what I mean? As opposed to, there's no way that Bergen Catholic kid really covered. No way Todd Shannon really could cover that guy without interfering.
Yeah.
So he throws the flag.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, implicit bias. It's there.
You know what, though? It's implicit, but the word I use all the time is it's unintentional. It's not.
Yeah, you don't know it's there.
Correct.
That's implicit.
Yeah,
it's underlying. You don't know
correct.
that it's, the things you're speaking about, it's planted in your subconscious. You don't know it. Like you just said, it's got to be a pass interference. this guy is uncoverable.
Correct.
Right.
So I don't think it's intentional any way, shape, or form, but it does manifest itself though.
Thoughts? I mean, it wasn't even close. I don't even know why we're discussing, but PC versus Chaminade. What did you see in that? Did you see anything?
I just think Crew Cologne is fantastic. We're walking up the field. Funny story. Two things happen. We're walking up the field at Cleveland Heights, and it was a great game. And Paramus Catholic wins 43-41, and Massey has the big game. And I'm sitting in the truck writing my story before driving home, and two things happen. A guy from Cleveland Heights, gestured, he saw my license plate in New Jersey, rolled down the window, and he's like, first thing he says is, "What grade is that running back?" Talking about Achilles. I'm like, he's a sophomore. And the guy goes to me, "Purdue ought to look that guy up." And I laughed, I'm like, Purdue? Who wants to go to Purdue for crying out loud? But anyway, okay. And then the next thing happened was, they were like, "Isn't that the quarterback going to Temple?" And I'm like, "No, he's thinking of the Pope John kid." I'm like, "No, this was his first start." And he was like, "It's his first start." I said, "Yeah." So it is such a quarterback game. And Russo wouldn't give Crew the keys if he didn't think he could do it. Mm-hmm. And so I just think his performance, he has justified the trust that they've put in him. They got weapons, man. They got weapons. I'm a little bit worried about their defense too, being their flaw, but they're going to be a factor down the stretch. I really believe it.
Pope John versus Hayes. I thought Pope had turned the corner.
I'm happy for Dom. I really am happy for Dom. What's the running back's name?
Tyreek Hill.
He just pops on the screen. I mean, he looks like a real player. And Pope John for years was a tough place to go play and win. They didn't have quite the talent as everybody else the last couple of years, but you know they're for real. I mean, you could make the argument that, are they better than Bosco? Are they the third?
Are
they the third? All right, I know, but are they the third best team? But go ahead.
So my thoughts on Bosco is, as we discussed, right? You look at DePaul, defensive problem. They can't stop anybody, right? I don't know who Joe's is anymore after last week. If they don't get their guys back, what I saw last week looked too much like last year. But let's just say, coming into this week, I thought they were a hell of a defensive unit. So you have Bergen that plays defense, you have Joe's, and you have Bosco. No one else plays defense outside of that. So now you ask yourself, who has a better chance of scoring? Now we know Sabella, second half of the season, this is not unusual. Sputtering out the gate.
No, because they schedule so tough. They could have scheduled cupcakes and they could be 4-0 right now. You know what I mean? They could, but that's not what they want to do.
His teams are used to it, so they'll believe him when he says we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Because every guy in that locker room, except for probably the freshmen, have saw it before.
You know, they've been in 3 state finals. You know
and
what I mean?
started off like crap every year.
Yes.
You know?
Now I will say 1-4 is kind of uncharted territory, but we'll see what happens. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, Bergen, I hate that you have that coming up, right? But we know that's Bergen.
Well,
Bosco.
I'll tell you what, though. If they beat Bergen, do we care? You know, are they 2-3 and number 1 in the state?
If they beat Bergen, they go on to run the table, in my opinion. They go on now. Playoffs, they might have trouble, but if they beat Bergen, it's gonna that snowball's gonna start running downhill.
All right, we'll see. We'll see.
But again, that's a big if, right?
Big if.
We could say if mine had ball, she'd be my own. So it doesn't matter. So that's my thought, on Bosco.
But we were talking about defense.
And those guys play defense. Right. Everybody else is offensive units, and then I can show you things about the competition they played to where now we have to say Bosco can essentially possibly hold a lot of those teams to very low output. Very low output. Now that puts them in a field position, kind of like we talked about down in Florida when you said, what do you think Bergen has to do to win it? I said the combined score has to be below 56. It has to become a New Jersey football game played in the phone booth. And no sooner than I said that,
it was 34-7. It was 34-7.
I don't even think I got to say body. It happened so fast.
It was
But
34-7.
that's Jersey football, and I think that only a couple of teams are capable of forcing other teams here to playing Jersey football, like And I think Bosco is one of them. They struggle offensively, but if we're being honest, Bergen's not that efficient offensively either. If you look at how their points are manufactured, they're just really good defensively. That puts their offense in opportunistic situations. Like you mentioned about Joe's rhythm, so I don't know who they are right now.
I'm a little bit more optimistic about Joe's, and I'll tell you why. Grusser's good. And go back again, quarterback, and I think his ability to run with the football is a dimension that they lacked last year.
They haven't had a guy like him in a long time.
If you go back and you remember the glory days of Ramapo and Drew.
God bless you.
Yes. And of course it's the same offense. It's the Gibbs offense. It was almost like it was DePrima and then there was somebody else before him. Wingfield. AJ Wingfield. It was almost like Drew had this awesome offense, bang, 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 and then when it developed that he had where he had a dual threat at quarterback, it was like Ramapo went from here to 13-0 good. It went from being Bergen County good to state good. So when I see what Joe's has now, and I see Grusser's ability to kind of do that, because you know more football than almost anybody. You're putting 4 wide receivers out there. If you're not disciplined in your rush lanes, and these lanes open up for the defensive line, Grusser's got 20 yards. You know what I mean? If he looks, boom, and no defense can stop that. It's just really hard. So that's why I'm a little more. I was surprised by what happened at Joe's, but
let me push back on that. I agree with you with Grusser. That he is something a component they've been missing for a very long time.
I gotcha.
So we talk a lot about, there's a guy over at Montclair. We know him as Bubba Lewis, real name Malachi Lewis. Lineage to Montclair is documented. Everybody knows. He arrived at Montclair and they was on a roll. They were 3-0 heading into this week against Union City. They lost that game. Did you know you follow anything that had to do with the Montclair Union City?
So my first job here and my first day, I worked in Montclair for 5 years. So I covered every Montclair. I was there for the Ed Labita years, 98 to 03.
Oh, those are the glory years.
Those are good years. I helped write a book about the glory years. Now, so it is fun. I've gotten to go to a couple of Montclair games over the last. They're not in our coverage zone. So. But it's fun for me. I love hearing about Montclair football and the rivalry with Union and the rivalry. They played. I was not there for what's the Randolph game, the most famous New Jersey high school football game in history with the field goal that was good or wasn't good. And it was like, at this point, the Ledger will say there was 98,000 people at the game at this point. Next time they do a story. But no, I don't. I know Union City won. The only thing that caught me about that is, how good is Passaic Tech then? They're number 1 in our public school poll now.
Well, why'd you ask that question? Tell our viewers why.
Because Passaic Tech beat Union City, and Montclair's good. Montclair's good. So, another thing.
I think they got a special thing going over at Passaic Tech, but
I think so too.
I think this might be a year for them.
The Dive Twins are so good, and they're good. They're good people. They're good kids, and their defense is good. Do they have just enough offense? And they just score enough points when they have to, when it's cold. In October, November. So that was my biggest takeaway. Was if Union City beat Montclair, Passaic Tech beat Union City. How good is Passaic Tech? Passaic Tech must be pretty good. So Passaic Tech is pretty good.
I mean, would you saying that? Do you have a sleeper over there?
In Group 5?
Yeah. I want. That's what I want. Just tell me your sleeper.
East side?
Which East side? Newark East side? Patterson East side?
Patterson East side.
Yeah, you like them?
I do. They are, because they have athletes who can single-handedly score a couple touchdowns and it's 14-0. You know what I mean? So they're going to be a tough out for somebody. So that was my first team I would think of.
Yeah, they struggle with the hometown school here, Clifton. Like Clifton,
Listen, it's so much fun. The non-publics have this thing too. St. Peter's always plays Bosco tough. Bosco always gives Bergen everything they want. Mm-hmm. Bergen always gets up for Joe's. You know what I mean? And it's the same kind of thing.
Do you remember when Joe's used to give PC fits? And
Absolutely, absolutely. They were the only team who could
handle PC.
Absolutely, they were the only team who could handle PC. That was why it was such a big deal when Jabril beat PC. You know, when they lined up in the Wildcat, they finally beat him.
Oh, Joe's, you mean? Yeah.
Joe's, when they finally beat Joe's. Yeah. So we have the same thing at the other levels. You know, like I think it would. Ridgewood always seemed to have a hex on saying tech, but like Clifton and Clifton always gave. And then Northern Highlands showed up, and they could always beat Clifton. And I was like, how did that happen? You know, so it's because of matchups and styles, and who you have, and kids are, you can never quite tell what's really inside the kid's heart when they run out on the field. And whether they believe they can win or not. Because if they believe they can win, that's why I go back again to last year. You lose 31-7. Bergen loses 31-7. Somehow Vito convinces these guys to believe that they're going to win when they play the next time.
Oh, no. He didn't have to convince them. See, you had good senior leadership. DJ Samuels,
of course.
Sidear, you had good guys like that. I had DJ here after they won the state champion. And he said, going into that game in MetLife, before the game, he went over to Chase and said, it will be over my dead body that you take a state championship ring with you to Texas. But I will die before you get one of those.
I understand that, but that's hard. Not a lot of kids act that way. Yeah. Not a lot of kids act that way. Mm-hmm. So to have that courage of your convictions is rare. And so that's why it happened. I do this every year when the playoffs happen. I have the stats back for years and years. Whenever we get these playoff rematches, especially in public schools, if Team A beat Team B the first time,
season,
Team A always, almost always wins the second time around. Mm-hmm. And I over years, I've kind of developed this theory that it really comes down to, well, we beat you the first. I believe we're going to beat you again, no matter what you do to us. Now we beat you one, we're going to beat you again. So to overturn that kind of result says a lot about your character.
Thoughts on Irvington starting the season 0-2, getting blown out, and then having this week played 2 games this week. One they won 50-0. I think that was on Monday, and then they had another one recently in which it was like a 30. They're rolling now. Is that because the transfers are now eligible to go, or what do you think about them going forward?
They are a team to watch. I was real high on them. I remember when we were doing our preseason poll saying to everybody, like, Irvington's a top 10 team in the state. And then they couldn't score a point.
Yeah, Millville's like...
They couldn't score a point. I believe in the transfer portal. I really do. If you're talented and you're good and you want to go play somewhere else, go. Nobody's stopping Darren from where he works.
Another job.
Exactly right. Nobody's stopping you from where you work, and if you want to change jobs. So why are we restricting kids like that? However, team sports, football, it's not always that easy to walk in. You know what I mean? And I've had this conversation with Sabella over the years and Morangi over the years. Like, to some transfers walk in and they bump a kid who was really liked in the locker room. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's happened. And the rest of the team, they just don't put out that 100% for the transfer kid. Mm-hmm. And so it takes some time to gel when you bring in a lot of transfer. But I'm not, look at Colorado. I mean, Colorado's the talk of freaking country. So they're just so athletic. So I think that's the situation. It just takes a little time to play together. One of the things I think that is one of the least understood and least celebrated things that Vito and Nick and Dan and Danny and Richie do is they get kids from all over the state, and kids who have grown up playing for Little Falls Pee Wee forever and ever, and then they pluck them, and then they're in a total situation. They don't know who that kid is. They don't know who that kid is, and yet they make them into a team. It's not that easy, to bring kids from all these different towns. We write about this all the time with the co-ops, Walwick, Midland Park, Cliffside Park, Richfield. You merge these two towns, and the coaches even talk about it. Like, there's always like a natural, who the heck are you? I don't know you. I didn't go to elementary school with you or anything. So the ability to bring kids from all over different areas in the state and form a cohesive team is tough. It's not always easy. So I think that's what the hurdle Irvington's getting over.
Okay, so while we're on Irvington is one of the most reputable public schools in North Jersey, and this week they're playing winless Seton Hall Prep. Is this the year that a big private finally goes down?
It's a fun question because it's something that I've asked myself too. What was it? Was it Clifton who was playing Del Barton a couple of years? Clifton, and they had him on the ropes one year. They couldn't pull it off. The answer is probably not. Because I'm going to go back because of the belief thing. Because Seton Hall Prep walking in believing they're going to win because they have won for so long. And it'll take a real special performance. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it'll take a real special performance for it to happen.
Okay. I want to walk you through a few things matching up this week. Do you know anything about the Episcopal team that Pope John is playing?
No.
All right, don't know much about. Thoughts on PC versus DePaul, right? That's an
First
important
one
game.
To 50? First one to 50?
Who is the first one to 50?
That's a great question. We were in our staff meeting Monday. We're going over the games, and I'm going to Bergen Bosco, and I was saying to my editor, like, I really kind of think PC DePaul's a better game. I do think it's a better game. I think that it's two teams both looking for a little respect, and I think that's a great individual.
Let me throw something in there that you need to add into that. There's a few DePaul kids at PC, that will be eligible to play. You have the kid Max, who played running back at DePaul last year, the backup running back. The starting running back, Jaden, is at Paramus Catholic now, and I think Achilles is injured, so he'll probably see a lot of time. And I believe there's one more kid I can't get off the top of my head from DePaul. So there's something there for both teams, right? Because PC is a snowball that can start rolling downhill. And it's important for schools like DePaul with PC, St. Peter's as well, PC got a lot of their kids too, to punch them in the mouth to kind of show kids you made a mistake when you make that move.
Right.
Because if you don't, you know what's going to start to happen. That's one of the best environments that you can be in. And once kids start seeing they can go there and they can win, it's trouble. So PC is going to be playing hard to establish that, right? To get the old winning culture back. And DePaul is going to be fighting very hard to hold on to what they have. Because PC will take everything you have after they take the W from you.
I think PC wins. I think PC wins.
Just give me a score.
Oh God, it's gonna be like 49-42. I mean, I could
so
literally,
entertaining.
I could literally see there being like 3 touchdowns scored in the last 2 minutes. You know what I mean? That said, it'll probably like be rainy and it'll be 6-0. But I just think what you said is, I think PC's a little deeper. I think PC's a little deeper, and this is a big shoot. Is it? They still haven't beat a Big 16.
Nah, they got. This is the belief game. To show we belong.
Yeah, it is a big belief game, and I don't. But you know what? I don't think it at all hurts DePaul in the long run if they lose this one. But I like PC a little bit more for PC to gain than DePaul. A little bit more 1-2 on the PC side.
That's at PC? I don't know. I'm not
it's
sure.
I think it's at DePaul.
Okay, so it's at DePaul. I think that this game is is a game PC has circled, and I think it matters because you have to beat one of these teams,
You have to.
right? Because I mean, you could talk about Cleveland Heights. You know, you can look at the film. Safeties was all out of alignment. It was like a JV team. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these teams aren't really good, but PC is very, very talented. They're amongst the most talented teams in our league.
They are. You know who they are? You know who they are? They're St. Joe's last year.
Well, I don't know if that's a compliment or insult.
I think it is. I think it is. You know, well, I'll tell you that if St. Joe, if PC goes 6-5 this year, would we consider that a success? After
I think so.
You would.
Yeah.
So that was what St. Joe's was last year.
All right, I get where you're going there. So then we have St. Joe's versus St. Peter's Prep. What do you see happening, and tell us why?
I am a big. You scoffed at me a little bit, which is fine. I love having different, but I think Joe's is going to win. I do think that the identity of St. Peter's is right now is a little messy, and it's got to wear in your heads. You're at the 1 yard line, you fumble the ball in the end zone. I mean, I think that carries over. I think that carries over. So I think Joe's has something to prove. In a way, if I'm Peters, I'm almost like I wish Joe's hadn't lost. You know what I mean? Because it might have woke him up a little bit. And I don't necessarily think that Peters has the defense to stop Yassine. And so I just feel like it's a good. I think it's a better matchup for Joe. I just think it's a better matchup
so
for Joe.
that's what I hadn't considered because I was so disgusted by what I saw from Joe's in Long Island that all I could imagine is Jalen running fine Klein running for over 200 something yards on them because the linebacker play is atrocious.
But I think if you're Joe's, aren't you like we're make somebody other than Speedy beat us, right? If you're
But can you?
So
that's the point. Because
you.
I saw, and again, we tried not
Well, I'll
to
hit you
single.
with this. How about, if Speedy gets 150 and 2 touchdowns, but you shut down everybody else, I mean, if you're Morangi, you're like, oh, we'll take that, right? We win 28-14?
I said over 200 yards.
You think? I don't know. That's a lot.
Speedy's been doing what he's capable of doing since he was young.
You talked a lot about the Josie. I hit Danny with this question, Rangy, a couple of times. Does it hurt your defensive style
The quick offense.
to have to go up against the quick offense in practice all the time? It's almost like your defense is built to stop teams that play like you. Mm-hmm. Nobody else plays like you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he did say, that's kind of a factor. He's like, I don't really think, we got to play better. Which is, but I got to believe that but this is also where the game is headed and is evolving to is speed and quickness on defense to match all the speed and quickness everybody's putting out on offense.
The other offense at St. Anthony's was almost an identical clone to their offense. So
I do wonder, though, when you face a more traditional type of offense, like St. Peter's is going to run or Bosco's going to run, if it matters, that's not the look we see in practice every day, whereas it used to be. But I think Joe will be fine.
All right. And then the granddaddy of them all, Bergen versus Bosco.
Bergen Bosco 79. We have to throw out the past, right? Because
only thing that matters that day is Friday night.
Sadir and DJ aren't playing. You know what I mean? But when you look at it, and I pride myself on trying to be accurate when I've seen both teams, and I've seen both teams in person, and so I just don't think I don't think Bergen can score a lot, but I'm not sure Bosco can score much at all.
Yeah.
So could I see it being a 1-score game going into the fourth quarter? I could, but I more kind of see it as Bergen by a couple of touchdowns. Bergen's got Bosco's offense is it just hasn't hit yet. It just hasn't hit yet. I do believe Danny will figure out what Sisler's good at, and that'll be their thing. I mean, listen, Minicucci a couple years ago, I remember it seemed to me they ran 3 plays. It was like we're either handing the ball up the middle or we're rolling out. Or Minicucci's keeping going around the end, or he's throwing a little short pass. But it was you couldn't stop it because if you tried to take away the outside, well, we'd run we'd run up the middle. If you tried to, we tried to cover the pass, you tried to pinch in, we'd run outside. You tried to go outside, so I just think at this stage right now, Bergen's a more complete team, and they'll win.
So you got Bergen on that. All right. So before we close, I just want to ask, because I saw you on the Bergen sideline. Obviously, you travel with Joe's, you follow PCs, all different guys. Where do you think the parochial league is at in regards? You know the guys, right? The Power 5 guys. Who's impressed you? That because I know a lot of them are impressive, but there's some people that I'm sure surprised you, right? Like that.
You mean individual players? Or
individual players.
I talked about Des Jones already. He impressed.
And when you talked about him, and I don't want to lead the witness, but I'm going to ask this one. I was surprised you didn't say Quincy Porter.
Quincy's a fantastic player too. I just haven't seen enough of him.
Okay.
Great question. I just haven't seen enough of him. He was the only Bergen guy who seemed like he could run with the Chaminade Madonna kids, which is saying a lot. And again, if you didn't see Chaminade Madonna, they were amazing. So I got Bobby Mays from Bosco. Got to find a way to get him the ball some. He's impressed me. Kenyon Massey was fantastic. It's so funny, too. We used to talk about Speedy Klein. I'd pay money to watch Speedy play, As a reporter, we don't have to do that. So he's impressive. It's funny, though, what we're not talking about. The Lamont Lester from Bosco, the linebacker, he was fantastic. But it's funny, we're talking about skill guys. A lot of skill guys.
Then go name me. Tell us guys.
But again, it speaks to where the game's evolving. Mm-hmm. I don't know who the best. It doesn't seem like I've noticed this over the years. Some years you got great quarterbacks. Some years you got big guys up front on both sides of the line. Some years you've got skill players, and this is one of the years we got skill players. I think all the quarterbacks are good. We don't really have one elite quarterback yet. And I want to go back to something, flying home from Miami and blah, blah, blah. We're used to, and we started the conversation talking about Bosco being a national power and stuff. So, what's the missing ingredient to get one of our North Jersey teams to be a national champ again? What do you think it is?
Depth for starters. That's what it was required. And in the trenches, they were big, fast, ugly, deep.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
Quarterback.
Well, quarterback is the key to everything. It starts the car.
And I don't want to diminish any of our guys playing quarterback, but none of the kids, as of now, are going to NC State like the kid is at Chaminade. None of them are going to LSU. None of them are going to Alabama. But one's coming. I guarantee you there's one out there. You know what I mean? I don't know. Nas would probably know more than we would. But I guarantee there's one out there that's in the pipeline somewhere in this state. Devin Leary's a great example.
Mm-hmm. Well, South Jersey comes up with those guys.
They do. We haven't seen one of those guys yet. We go down to Spalding, and the quarterback, Malik Washington, junior for Spalding, playing Bosco. Big arm, incredible talent. And I remember thinking to myself, what would Sabella do with a kid like that? You know what I mean? With a 6'4" kid with a rifle for an arm. The Bishop McDevitt kid going to Kentucky. Boy, was he good. You know what I mean? He was the best player. And I loved what Bishop McDevitt did at the end of that game, in that they threw the ball to win. They got the ball with 6 minutes left, 4 minutes left, and they didn't go scared. Man, they threw the ball to get the first down. They were like, we're going to run out the clock. We're going to trust this big guy. So I'm waiting for that big Division I quarterback to show up to elevate North Jersey back.
I always say I don't know if we'll get it, and the reason why I say that is because it's like a trend, right? the recruiters come back to where there's been success, right? So like as you spoke about Louisiana, everybody's going down there looking for those athletes because they produce on the next level.
Right.
When it comes to Jersey, the D linemen, the D linemen, O linemen, DBs, right? These are places that have been, these positions have been very successful. Our quarterback in North Jersey hasn't translated to success at the college level.
Guarantano
hasn't translated to success at the college
but
level.
I mean, really, you start to think back. Who was the last North Jersey quarterback?
In my opinion, the last North. So
Angeli
was like no.
Angeli will see.
And we spoke about him before we got on the air. I
think
think he'll be fine. But Wimbush was the last one that was
on the cusp.
On the cusp, right?
Cusp, yeah.
Because before that, success looks like Mike Till.
Yeah, that's a great.
That's
a good one.
Mike Till. That's as good as it got, and they're not going to come shopping here anymore. If that's the best we got to offer, when you got California, you got guys dime a dozen down there. Most of these schools are taking one quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to take for quarterback play to change up here. I don't. I've seen some, in my opinion, some really good under the radar ones. Last year, I believe it was last year, Seton Hall, not last year, year before last, they had a kid, Jalen something, that went to Harvard. And he was in the same year as Angeli. And I remember watching him, and I love Angeli. Like I told you before we got on the air, he's going to start at Notre Dame next year. But that kid, Jalen, that was at Seton Hall Prep, might have been the best quarterback in North Jersey. He was,
well, who's the stud? There's a kid right now at Notre Dame, right? The kid going to Rutgers.
Okay. Yeah, I watched him. I'm not so sold.
Okay.
But
So
but we'll see, right? Because we're still waiting on that guy. Who is it?
I think they're out there. We're just waiting for one to show up. That's what I think.
And you're right. That's the difference. Because when you looked at when we were successful on that level, not for nothing. Back then, the guys you see starting at all of these schools would have been waiting their turn at Bosco, because you had it just never stopped. You went from Till to Sims, from Sims to Nova. It just kept turning, right? New Tile. These,
we're skipping the stud athlete. His sister was a superstar athlete at Ramsey High School. Oh my God, why can't I remember his name? Yeah. Not before Yankovic.
He wasn't that tall though, right?
He wasn't that tall.
I remember who you're talking about.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That'll drive me nuts.
But yeah, so it hasn't really.
But see, we're so blessed we get to watch this and have so much fun.
Actually, you know who I think was the best quarterback?
Wimbush is a great answer, by the way. That's a great answer.
Do you remember the Robinson kid at Paramus High School? Went to Villanova.
Right. Won the Walter Payton Award as the best player in the country in 1AA.
But he didn't play private school ball, so a lot of people didn't know coming out of high school. Had he went to one of the privates, he would have chose his.
And he's a Sabella kid.
Yeah.
He's a Sabella kid.
True. So, So I just wanted to get your opinion on that. You got to see the guys. I feel like you said, we got a lot of skill guys in North Jersey.
Everybody's got skill guys, though. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got skill guys because it's easier to be. You can get guys who can run and catch. It's not as easy to throw the ball and command an offense and be a leader. And offensive, you're right about the defensive offensive lineman. Yes, that is still a hallmark of being here. I look at that at the pro level sometimes. Everybody's Garrett Wilson, right, for the Jets. Mm-hmm. Great wide receiver, right? I root for the Saints. My guy Olave is pretty good too. Mm-hmm. And people don't.
Oh, he's from New Orleans?
No, but he plays for the Saints. He plays for the Saints with Ohio State. Yeah. And I'm always like, everybody's got a A1 wide receiver. Everybody thinks their guy is the best. I'm like, Jamar Chase from LSU is pretty good. Justin Jefferson from LSU, pretty good. Mm-hmm. Chris Olave, pretty good. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel from San Francisco, pretty good. It happened. There's a lot of good skill players at every level. It's the difference makers are the quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. So where's Varsity Aces going to be?
We will. We get Saturday off because there's nothing on Saturday. But I got my parking spot reserved at Bosco. I will be there early. Hopefully the Wi-Fi isn't too bad, but it'll be bad. So that's where I'll be. It'll be Bosco Bergen 79, and there'll be a big crowd. The weather's supposed to be nice. As far as like pre-game scenes in North Jersey, if I had to, Bosco's the best. It is. Bosco's the best. Pre-game scene.
Better than Bergen?
Oh yeah, because of the room. For the room in the parking lot, the tailgate.
Bergen,
the tailgate scene is.
I like Bergen's tailgate scene too. I mean, I guess because there's certain guys that got good food over there.
Crowded.
You know, like go check Quan's corner. I'm sure he's gonna put Quan's corner in Bergen, and I mean at Bosco this weekend. The food is hella good over there.
All right, I'll look it up.
That's Kyle Sanders' dad.
Sure.
Shout out Kyle Sanders. Yeah, so that's pretty much it, man.
That's it?
This is Keepitabuck with Darren Cooper from Varsity Aces, man. You just wanted to get your take on how you guys went about ranking these teams.
It's not about who just A beats B beats C. It's not the only factor.
Yeah, and I think that was interesting that the people got to hear how you guys even pick all county, right? Because that upsets people. That really upsets some people.
Because not necessarily the 7th best kid at Bergen deserves it over the best, the only player at a Glen Rock or a Walworth Inland Park.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what the argument. Sometimes there's kids that, like, this kid's not going to school and this kid's going to school and I gave it to that kid. Like,
correct.
Yeah, so.
You know what? Colleges make mistakes too sometimes.
That I know, man. For me, I watched that Bosco Bergen game remote. I'm going to be traveling down to Notre Dame.
Who they playing?
Notre Dame versus Ohio State.
They any good?
We're going to find out. We're going to find out. And that's the moment we keep it a buck. Thanks for tuning in. Peace. Darren, thanks, man. Appreciate you so much.